neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereupon the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And therein we have the loophole that has allowed the institution of slavery to continue in the United States of America since 1789. Prior to the Civil War, there weren't any real significant numbers of black men in Southern prisons. They would, or on plantations and such, mines, things like that, as slave labor or executed. But it ballooned after the war. Why? Because of that right there. Because of that little exclusion written in 1789 was used in the late 1860s to begin to incarcerate black men in large numbers, because that way the plantation owners and such could continue to have the slave labor they have always wanted. And that institution continues today. We still have slave labor in America. Now, some might say, well, if they're in prison, they deserve to have to work. Well, if you force someone to work and they don't have a choice, that's slavery. And some might say, well, we pay them. Yes, I believe the going rates is between 33 cents and $1.41 per hour. And they're only allowed to make a maximum of $5 per day, I believe, something like that. That's slave labor. And don't kid yourself. So what do I propose? Well, my proposal is simple. We need to have non-profit prisons. They should be state-run. Non-profit prisons that are profit-driven should not exist in the United States of America, period. All those that are currently open need to be closed. All of those prisoners need to be transferred to publicly owned prisons. But you're going to say, oh, how are we going to have the room for that? We have the room for that by making marijuana legal and decriminalizing all other drugs and getting everyone that's currently in prison for drug offenses out and have those offenses erased from their records. Boom. Suddenly, the prison population would drop drastically. We would have ample space in our publicly run prisons for everyone. Next thing I would do is make sure that the minimum wage was $23 an hour and then pin it to inflation and have that apply to prisoners as well as people on the outside world. Now, you're going to say, well, $23 an hour is a ridiculous amount. Well, no, it isn't actually. It's a minimum that we should be paying people for their labor. And I wouldn't let prisoners have access to the full $23 an hour. I would allow them to have access to 10% of that, and the rest we put into an account where it would grow interest. That's it. That's simple. And if they need to send remittance home, they could, but there would have to be a policy in place so that the family would not just then be funneling the money back into their account through deposits into their prison account. You can actually send money to prisoners. There's some set amount you can send, things like that. But you would make sure that they couldn't game the system, and that's completely foolish. That way, when the prisoners got out of their sentence, they'd actually have some money. Think about that. They leave prison and they're not destitute. They leave prison and they can then go start a life. They've paid their debt. And you might say, well, what about the debt they owe the people they harmed? Well, you see, I wouldn't put people in prison for monetary crimes. They could pay them off. So I would only send people to prison for violent crimes. That's the only reason, in my opinion, you should send anyone to prison. If it's simple material goods crimes, if someone's got robbed or something got broken or things like that, then you just work out a system of restitution. Public work, working for the public community, things, pay back the people they harmed, boom, you're done. You never have to go to prison. Maybe you may have to put in 5 or 10 hours a week at doing some kind of community effort to help the system that you harmed, but you'd be able to be free, be able to continue with your life. You wouldn't have to go bankrupt yourself. You wouldn't have to lose your home and your family and everything else in your job. You would be allowed to still function in society. And society would just say, well, you've stepped off, outside the edges, so we got to move you back in. So this is what you have to do to get back in the good graces of society. Quite reasonable. We would not be stripping people of their freedom pointlessly. But right now we have slave labor, and it's considered acceptable in America. People don't even think about it. They don't frame it in the concept of slave labor. And they should, because if you force someone to work and they have no choice, that's slavery. And it's considered acceptable in America. And we police and arrest and incarcerate black men at far higher percentages than the white population. And if anyone in my comments says, well, the black population in America has higher levels of criminality, I will block them so goddamn fast it will make your head spin. Because that is nothing but a white supremacist narrative. Black people are not more criminally inclined than white people. They are just policed more. There's a difference. If you think that black people are more criminally inclined than white people, you are a white supremacist. And I will not have that bullshit on my channel. So we need to end slave labor. And we should have never had it after Civil War. It shouldn't have existed at the foundation. It shouldn't have existed in 1789, and it shouldn't have existed at the inception of our nation. If our founding fathers believed what they said, they should have emancipated every single person on this entire territory that they controlled the day that the United States came into existence. Now that would be something that really means freedom.